Hey everybody, welcome back to my podcast, Anatomy and Physiology Bit by Bit. This is your host, Dr. Steve Sullivan, coming to you from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. As most of you know, I've been teaching A&P at Bucks County Community College since 2002, which at the time of this recording is over 22 years. Today we're going to continue on with blood vessels, and we're going to specifically talk about capillary exchange, which is the movement of materials from the blood to your tissues and from your tissues back into your blood. But before we get into that, I want to share with you a handful of short conversations that I had with people at this year's annual conference of the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society. This is an organization of anatomy and physiology professors, authors, publishers, content creators of all kinds, and we get together every year and we share what we do. Some of us share our methods with others, we learn from each other, we attend common lectures together with advancements in our field, and it's a great time, and a lot of the people who go there every year are pretty close, so we really enjoy seeing each other. This year, I was fortunate enough that some of my friends graced me with sitting down and letting me record a short conversation with them, and some of them are people I've known for years. Some of them are people I just met this year. So I have a series of conversations that's going to only be about 25 minutes or so, but with several different people, professors, authors, researchers, publishers, and even people who make the materials that we use to teach anatomy and physiology, like models. So I hope you join me for that. We're going to go to that first, and then when we come back, we'll get into capillary exchange. All right, I'm here with Professor Nahel Awadallah at the annual conference for the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society in St. Louis, Missouri. Professor Awadallah, my good friend Nahel, tell me about teaching A&P. What do you love about teaching A&P and being at this conference?
I love being able to have students connect the different organ systems together as one unit.
Okay.
To view the whole body as a whole, not just separate systems, and be able to relate it to their own experience and their own growth cycle.
Nice. Where do you teach?
I teach at Nash Community College, Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
North Carolina? It's in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's in the U.S.
All right. Well, I got a lot of listeners from all over the world.
Part, yes.
A lot of Australians listen to my podcast, so thank you so much for tuning in from Australia, everybody. So what kind of students do you have? Like, what are your students taking A&P for? What do they want to be?
Most of my students are nursing students. Some of them are physical therapy students. There are a few that plan to become physician assistants, and I have maybe 2 or 3 per year that are dental hygiene students.
Oh, nice. So I've known you for probably 15 years?
16 years.
Yeah, and so most of the time we see each other here at the annual conference for the A&P Society, for HAPS. So what's your favorite thing about the HAPS conference besides seeing me?
Yes, besides seeing you is meeting other A&P faculty and being able to learn from them, because when you listen to their workshops, you'll be able to take things with you home and make changes to your classrooms. And so being able to experience what other faculty are experiencing in their own classrooms, learning from them and adjusting and enhancing your classroom and teaching style makes you a better instructor and also gives the student a better experience.
So you are here in this, even though you are a premier anatomy and physiology professor in the United States, you're still coming to improve yourself so that your students can have better outcomes.
Yes, because there's always there are many that are always better than me, and so you just learn from them, and hopefully.
I don't know about many.
No, there are. I mean, there are many experts in the field that you end up learning from. I actually end up learning from you as well.
And I learn from you.
Thank you. So I go home and think about what can I do to change this chapter. What can I do to make it better? What did I learn today from this HAPS that I can take back with me and change my lecture notes and add things to it? And as long as you keep updating your notes, updating your lecture style, changing your teaching style to adapt to the student learning style and make it more interesting for them.
Awesome. And so what are you presenting on here?
I have 2 topics. I'm presenting one on enhancing your teaching style and adapting it to students. That's the first one. And that's in the morning tomorrow. And the other one is later in the afternoon talking about causes of student withdrawals, whether it's a student cause, whether it's faculty cause, or it's administrative cause.
Awesome. Yeah. That's going to be super helpful to all these instructors.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nahel.
You're welcome.
It was great to see you again, and I appreciate you talking.
Always a pleasure talking to you.
Now I have found Dr. Samaya Sledge from the University of Louisville, who is here at the HAPS conference.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Is this your first HAPS conference?
Yes, it is.
What do you think?
It is amazing.
Yeah, you like it a lot?
Yes, I love it. And they're huggers. I'm a hugger.
We are huggers because this is a pretty small conference and we all know each other and we see each other every year and it's a lot of fun that way. So have you learned a bunch of stuff?
Yes, I have.
And what about the workshops that are coming up? Are you excited for those?
I am very excited for those. I have a workshop already picked out for every single session. I studied the workshop book extensively, getting myself prepared for these sessions. Now, the only thing that's disappointing about it is that there are so many good workshops. And unfortunately, I can't attend them all.
You got to choose. I know that's the hard part.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I will be here for each day of the workshops, and I will be in every single session.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite thing about teaching anatomy and physiology?
How excited the students get when they learn something new.
Oh, what kind of students do you have? Like, what are they taking AP for? What do they want to be?
Nursing majors,
Okay.
dental hygiene majors, pre-PA students, pre-pharmacy students.
Oh, wow. You have a pretty broad range.
Yes, some of them are pre-medicine now.
Okay.
Psychology.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Nice. Do you like University of Louisville?
Yes, I do.
Are you from that area originally?
Yes,
Oh, you grew up in Kentucky?
yes.
Oh, cool. Not too many people get to stay home and do what they do.
I spent my whole adult life at the University of Louisville.
Oh, you got all your degrees there too?
Bachelor's of Science in biology with a concentration in cellular physiology and a minor in justice administration from the University of Louisville. Then I went on to the University of Louisville School of Medicine, where I completed my master's degree in physiology and biophysics. Also in the School of Medicine, I completed my doctorate in physiology and biophysics.
That's amazing. So basically, the University of Louisville realized what a good thing they had in Samaya, and they held on to you and wouldn't let you go.
Well, I held on to them.
Well, that's probably the other way around, but you're modest.
Yeah, but it was easy because what many don't know, unless I tell them, is that I was also raising children through every single one of these degrees.
Well,
so it was easier to stay home.
Applause for you. That is an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
How many kids you got?
5.
Wait, what?
So 5 through my bachelor's degree, 5 through my master's, but 4 with my doctorate because one had graduated high school by then.
Wow. Okay, so I know the listeners can't see this, but you also look like you're 24 years old. So that is unbelievable that you were able to do that.
No, I'm not 24. My baby is 17.
Congratulations on all of that. Well, Samaya, thanks so much for talking to me, and enjoy the rest of the HAPS conference.
Thank you.
All right, I'm still at the HAPS conference, and now I am talking to Zach Smallwood, who is from Anatomic Excellence, which is a company that makes plastinated cadavers for anatomical study. The website is anatomicexcellence.com if you want to look up some of these plastinated cadavers. And so, Zach, thank you. And could you please tell me, what is a plastinated cadaver? Like, what's the history of it? And what is the use for plastinated cadavers?
Yeah, thank you. So plastinated cadavers, it started way back in the 70s when Gunther von Hagens actually developed the process called plastination. And plastination in its simplest form is really taking a specimen that we've dissected and basically pulling out the cellular tissue and replacing it with a chemical component that equates to silicone, really. And it allows for the preservation method to last longer, and it just works a lot better in the cadaver world, really. So plastination and these specimens, the cadavers, really they're targeted towards medical education for teaching anatomy, and it's a great hands-on method. You learn by seeing these dissected bodies in different regions. You can manipulate the structures with some of our flexible plastinates and even some of our cross-sectional plastinates called slices and anatomy glass.
Oh, that is awesome. So these cadavers don't go bad?
No, they don't. They theoretically last forever. Some of the specimens that we have here at the conference have been around for a couple decades now.
Wow, that's amazing. So are these the same kind of specimens or same concept that people would see at a Body Worlds exhibit?
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. So Von Hagen's Plastination, the company started with Body Worlds in more of an artistic point of view for anatomy, and a couple decades ago they started to get into the world of medical education, directing their product to schools, institutions, research facilities, hospitals, and so on.
That's pretty cool. And could they get a whole body or parts of a body and things like that?
Yeah, so you can get full body specimens. Those typically take quite a bit longer, and it's we're a bit more particular about those. But we do regional anatomy from the pelvis, the lower limb, the upper limb, the digestive system, different organs. You can really do anything with the specimens, and you can request any type.
That sounds great. This seems like a really interesting thing for anatomy students to look up. So I'm going to let them know again that it's anatomicexcellence.com. And Zach, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Now I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Andy Russo from the University of Iowa, who is doing amazing research on migraine headaches and did a great presentation yesterday. So Andy, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And, tell me a little bit about your research about migraines and what you're all finding out about migraines that is so optimistic.
So Steve, yeah, that's the key word, optimistic. There's been a sea change in the past decade in the migraine research field because of the validation of CGRP. It's an awful acronym, CGRP. It's a neuropeptide that's involved in migraine, and the validation of drugs that target CGRP, I think, has proven that migraine is not some wishy-washy disease and it's a mind thing, just a headache. It's way more than that. It's actually a biochemical imbalance in the brain, just like we've learned about so many other neurological disorders. And that, I think, is the optimism that CGRP has brought to the migraine field, is they now say it's treatable. For about half the people who've taken this drug or class of drugs that target CGRP, they're improved. For some people, a small percentage, 10 to 20%, no more migraines at all. Freaking amazing.
That is amazing.
We need to find out more, though, about how we can treat the half who are not helped by these drugs.
Right.
And, we're given hope.
I was surprised to learn from your presentation that you had said something about almost 1 billion people worldwide suffer from migraine.
Yeah.
That is astronomical numbers.
It's at least 10% of the global population. And a disease that affects so many people, really, it's begging to be addressed and treated. Now, one of the challenges, Steve, is that these drugs I just mentioned, they're targeting CGRP, they're very expensive. And so they're not going to be accessible to a lot of people who don't have insurance or in third world countries who don't even have the facilities to be diagnosed with migraines. So I think that's, in the broader perspective, something that affects so many of our people. We need to really put a lot of effort into trying to understand better treatments.
Yeah, I would hope that the pharmaceutical companies who are developing these drugs can find a way to make sure we get them to the people who need them as much as we can around the world, regardless of their ability to pay. But that's really optimistic. So you said that these are good for treating migraines. What about preventing migraines?
Oh, actually, I misspoke. They're really good for preventing.
Oh,
and
wow,
that's the
even
major
better.
advance, is that we've had no good preventatives for migraine. The triptan drugs are pretty good for treating for acute attacks. So pop a pill when they feel the headache coming on. The real big advance with the CGRP drugs, I think, is, first off, as I mentioned, showing there's biochemistry behind this disease. It's not just imagination, but also showing that you can prevent it without terrible side effects. So the preventatives out there now don't work. People don't keep taking them because of this terrible side effects, and they don't work well to begin with. The CGRP drugs are working to prevent. So it's really giving hope to people who get 2 to 3 weeks a month and have headache. I can't imagine.
Well, that's amazing research. Thanks so much for doing that work, and thanks for taking the time to talk about it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, I have found Dr. Cinnamon Van Putty at the HAPS conference, and Cinnamon is a friend of mine for many, many years, and she is the host of this HAPS conference in St. Louis. So thank you for joining me, Cinnamon.
Good to be here.
Also, Cinnamon is the author of Seeley's Anatomy and Physiology, which is a very popular textbook that you may have seen if you're a student of A&P. Cinnamon, tell me, where do you teach A&P?
I actually teach at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville School of Dental Medicine. But for over 23 years, I taught pre-nursing students at Southwestern Illinois College, or SWIC.
All right, cool. And what was it like to put together a HAPS conference?
You know, it was a lot of fun, actually. The hardest part for me was trying to find people that I felt like could be good speakers and could hit the right target audience with information that our instructors would find useful and interesting and wouldn't be too specific, because we need to hit all the high points for our students, but we also want to make sure we keep current on all of the new information. The other part of it, with Caitlin Hyatt, our executive director of HAPS, she and her team are incredible. They really take care of everything, and they really just say to me, can we make sure we have this in place? Can we make sure we have this other thing in place? And I find out who I should call and get it all together.
That's awesome. Well, you did an amazing job. This has so far been a great conference, and I've really enjoyed myself here in St. Louis.
Thank you.
So tell me about your textbook, how long you've been writing that textbook.
So we, as a team, came to the Seeley's Anatomy and Physiology book in 2005. It was sort of an arranged marriage, if you will, amongst the three of us as authors, but...
Let me just chime in here for a second. The three authors of Seeley's Anatomy and Physiology are Cinnamon Van Putty of Southern Illinois University, Andy Russo of the University of Iowa, and Jennifer Regan of the Community College of Aurora in Colorado.
It was great. We actually are really close friends, and we all ended up having extremely similar views, and we work amazingly together. It's kind of sounds not real, but we're a good team. And you know, I had a lot of experience looking at different books, and I just really thought that I could help to incorporate the critical thinking into a textbook that I was using in my class.
That's great. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are benefiting from what's in your textbook and helping them learn A&P, which is not easy. So, well, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it, and thanks for putting on such a great conference.
Thank you, Steve. It was my pleasure.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com and use code AUDIO at checkout.
All right, now I am here with Dr. Judy Nath, who is a president emeritus of HAPS, the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society, and is also a professor at Penn State University in University Park, Pennsylvania. Judy is also the author of a textbook, Anatomy and Physiology textbook by Martini, and is the author of Sins Against Science, which is an amazing book that you can get on Amazon. Me again, I just want to throw in there that Judy Nath has written several books. And along with some co-authors, she has written books on medical terminology, fundamentals of anatomy and physiology, applied pathophysiology, visual anatomy and physiology, a human anatomy textbook. There's a lot. And Sins Against Science is a really fun way to learn about things that are scientifically proven. And what it does is it uses court cases in the United States that determined people's fates that have to do with these scientific principles. It is a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes so that you can find it online. You can also see a lot about Judy Nath on her website, judynath.com, JUDINATH.com. So, Judy, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Let me ask you, what was it like to be the president of the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society?
Being the president of the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society was an interesting experience, but I say interesting in a really good way because it's actually a 3-year commitment, because you come on as a president-elect, and then you're president, and then you're past president. But you can never predict in any presidency where your skill set is going to be needed most, and what you thought you were bringing into the organization as your mission for HAPS that year can be totally upended depending upon what's happening in the organization at the time. However, we always have a terrific board, and we always get things done, and we always advance the mission of the organization. So I would encourage anybody to get into leadership roles, particularly those that enhance professional organizations and those that advance professional organizations with an educational bent.
Well, you did a great job, because HAPS is an amazing organization and you kept it going. And I think that, were you past president during COVID, or was that right after you?
So I was the last president to have a conference.
That's what I thought, right.
I think I shut it down then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone did a really good job of keeping it going through COVID. We had a couple virtual conferences, and then we were back in 2022, and it feels like we're back to normal now. So, which is really, really nice. So I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
So what about, tell me about your experience with textbook writing. When you write a textbook that's meant for students to learn A&P, what are your specific goals?
That's an excellent question, particularly because my very first textbook was a medical terminology book. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
So I had my first published medical terminology book before I published an anatomy and physiology book.
Okay.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah, that is. But they're somewhat related.
They're all related in the sense that the goal, no matter what textbook it is to write it in such a manner that I understand the student population, and that student population is able to get something good out of it and to learn and to take that knowledge with them beyond the classroom.
That's a great way to look at it, is to really be student focused.
One saying that I continuously have is that it's not a reference for the discipline, it's a resource for the course.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
And I firmly believe that, and I tell that to my own students. There's no way you're going to memorize and regurgitate what's in this book. But what you can do is learn from it, and if something is not clear to you, then it's probably not clear to somebody else. So my students are really good at being a focus group. They're really good at being critics, and they will identify what isn't working for them, what is working for them, and then I can adjust accordingly. And that might get easier as time goes on, as we move toward a digital-first format.
Right.
We'll see.
That's good to hear.
We'll
What motivated you to write the other book, the Sins Against Science book, which isn't a textbook per se, but is just like something that sounds like you really wanted to put out there?
That's it, exactly. So I was frustrated with all the anti-science and the misinformation, and it came at a time when there was a pandemic, and I had a little bit of extra time because I wasn't commuting to and from work.
Yeah.
And it had been stirring around in the recesses of my brain, and I thought, if I can put something out there that helps the average person understand what's going on in science and also link it to the real world, then I perhaps can change some hearts and souls and minds to understand humanity a little bit better. My goal was to take what was happening in our world during the pandemic, apply the science to it, and show the intersection between science and society, and thereby showing that we are all linked together by our humanity.
I actually got that book for Christmas this year from my wife because she knew that was something I wanted, and I think it's amazing, and I thank you so much for helping to educate people about science and why science is real and science matters, and that we should be looking at evidence-based facts when we talk about the world around us. And I appreciate all that you do and getting it all out there for people.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for joining me, Judy.
Sure, anytime.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to those conversations, and thank you so much to everybody who sat down and talked to me, or sometimes we were standing, let's be honest. But I really appreciate the time that they gave, and I really appreciate their friendship and the colleagues that I have in this amazing organization that we like to call HAPS. Having said that, let's talk about capillary exchange. As you probably know, among the main functions of blood is to deliver substances to the tissues and pick up substances from the tissues. So these materials have to move back and forth between the blood vessels and the tissue fluid. And this mostly happens in the capillaries, and we call it capillary exchange. It's not just capillaries, it also happens in some venules as well. Some of the substances that we're exchanging back and forth are things like oxygen, glucose, electrolytes, carbon dioxide, metabolic products like antibodies and hormones. And then we also pick up waste products from the tissues, and we pick up things that they produce. So cells produce hormones and they produce antibodies and things like that, and then they want to give them to the blood. So a lot of times people misconstrue what's happening and they think the blood is delivering nutrients and picking up waste products. No, the blood is delivering nutrients and products and picking up waste products and regular products. So it's not just giving nutrients and taking on waste. It's a lot of stuff. There's 3 different paths that these materials can take to get from the blood to the tissue fluid and from the tissue fluid into the blood. They can go directly through the plasma membrane and cytoplasm of the endothelial cells that line these blood vessels. They can go through the tiny filtration pores of fenestrated capillaries, or they can slide between endothelial cells by way of the intercellular clefts, which are the gaps between one cell and the adjacent cell. Now, it's one thing to have a path, but there also needs to be a mechanism that is driving these contents back and forth. Where capillary exchange is concerned, there are 4 different mechanisms. They are diffusion, transcytosis, filtration, and reabsorption. So let's start with diffusion. You probably remember that diffusion is the net movement of a solute from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. And in order for this to occur, the substances in question have to either be permeable through the plasma membrane of the endothelial cells or small enough to pass through the filtration pores or the intercellular clefts. Things like glucose and oxygen are more concentrated in the blood than in the tissues. So they typically diffuse down their concentration gradients from the blood to the interstitial fluid of the tissues. Waste products like carbon dioxide or urea are more concentrated in the tissue fluid, so they diffuse into the blood down their concentration gradient. Proteins and other large molecules don't typically cross the capillary endothelium. Now let's talk about diffusion again for a second, because remember, diffusion is the net movement of a solute. These things are moving all the time. We know that. But when there's a higher concentration on one side of a membrane than there is on the other, then that movement all the time is obviously just by the way of averages, going to be more things moving to the lower concentrated side than to the higher concentrated side, because there's more things on the higher concentrated side to move over in that direction. So that's why we say diffusion is the net movement of a solute from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Because if you take the number of solute molecules moving from high to low and compare that to the number of solute molecules moving from low to high, you'll get a net movement, and you'll see high to low is the direction most things are moving. Now, another method is transcytosis, and this means to move all the way across a cell. When you think about the prefix trans, like transatlantic means all the way across the Atlantic, transcontinental means all the way across the continent. So transcytosis means all the way across the cell. And it uses typical membrane transport mechanisms like pinocytosis or endocytosis. So you're probably familiar with those. You can go back and listen to previous episodes where I talk about membrane transport, and you can see the different methods that materials will take to get all the way through a cell and across a cell's membrane. So basically what's going to happen is the endothelial cells of the capillary are going to pick up a substance on one side of the plasma membrane and transport it to the other side. This is not really common. It does work for fatty acids, albumin, and some hormones like insulin, but this is not by any means a common method of capillary exchange. What we're really going to focus a lot of our time on is filtration and reabsorption, because that is the majority of our transport, filtration and reabsorption. And this is a pressure-driven mechanism. Let's break it down into filtration and reabsorption and talk about the differences between those. Filtration is the net movement of water out of the capillary, and reabsorption is the net movement of water into the capillary. And they're dependent upon two types of pressures. So remember, these are pressure-driven. So one is hydrostatic pressure, which we talked about, the blood hydrostatic pressure. And that is the pressure that fluid places on the walls of its container. The other is osmotic pressure, and that's the pressure that a solute concentration exerts on the movement of water across a membrane toward the more highly concentrated side. So again, you can go back to previous episodes early on and listen to explanations on osmosis and osmotic pressure. Specifically, you're going to want to go listen to episode 4, and that will help prepare you for understanding it in this context. So the movement of water in and out of the capillary is mainly due to what's called colloid osmotic pressure, which is dependent upon the protein concentration of the fluids, which would be the blood plasma or the interstitial fluid. Since proteins typically stay put, the blood colloid osmotic pressure will abbreviate that BCOP, and the interstitial fluid colloid osmotic pressure, which we abbreviate IFOP, are the same from the arterial end of the capillary to the venal end. The blood colloid osmotic pressure, drawing water into the blood, measures around 27 millimeters of mercury or so, whereas the interstitial fluid osmotic pressure, drawing water out of the blood, is about 7 millimeters of mercury. So if we only consider the net colloid osmotic pressure, which is calculated at about 20 millimeters of mercury, favoring the blood colloid osmotic pressure, we can say that the net movement of water is from the interstitial fluid into the blood plasma of the capillary. So how did I get that net? So remember, the osmotic pressure, in a sense, draws water toward it. So if the osmotic pressure in the blood capillary, inside the blood capillary, is 27 millimeters of mercury, that means that that force is drawing blood into the blood vessel. Now, if the interstitial fluid osmotic pressure is 7 millimeters of mercury, that's the force drawing water into this tissue fluid from the blood. So what we need to do is subtract the force drawing out of the blood from the force drawing into the blood and see what we come up with. And what we come up with is 27 minus 7 units or millimeters of mercury, and we get 20 millimeters of mercury. Now, since it's higher in the blood than it is in the tissue fluid, the net force is drawing fluid into the blood. That is the osmotic pressure component of filtration and reabsorption. But we still have to consider whether or not the osmotic pressure can overcome the hydrostatic pressure in any given region of the capillary. So let's take a look at the hydrostatic pressures. The force that blood exerts on the inside of the capillary walls, as if it's trying to get out, is the blood hydrostatic pressure, or BHP. It depends on where we are in the body, but let's estimate that the BHP at the arterial end of the capillary is about 33 millimeters of mercury. So remember, the blood will flow from arterial into capillary into venial in that order, in that direction. So at the arterial end of the capillary, which is the beginning of the capillary, we're at 33 millimeters of mercury of hydrostatic pressure. That is the force that fluid is trying to get out of the capillary. Now, as we get to the venial end, the blood hydrostatic pressure drops significantly. And we can estimate that to be about 14 millimeters of mercury. Now, why does it drop? Well, one of the reasons is because these capillaries have holes in them, and fluid is going to be forced out of the capillary. The less fluid in the system, the less pressure in the system. So the blood hydrostatic pressure plummets from 33 millimeters of mercury to 14 millimeters of mercury. Remember, that is the force that is trying to get fluid out of the capillary and into the tissue fluid. Since the capillary is surrounded by interstitial fluid, the force it exerts on the outside of the capillary wall, as if it's trying to get in, is called interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure, or IFHP. This is usually so small that we can basically call it 0 millimeters of mercury. In some cases, it's actually a negative pressure, actually sucking water toward it. But if we use 0 millimeters of mercury, we can subtract that from the blood hydrostatic pressure and say the net hydrostatic pressure on the arterial end of the capillary is 33 millimeters of mercury, and at the venial end is 14 millimeters of mercury. Both of those are favoring water leaving the capillary and going into the interstitial fluid. So now that we have all the pressures, we can compare them to see which direction the net pressure is moving water, which is also known as the net filtration pressure. So let's start at the arterial end of the capillary. And we're going to calculate the net filtration pressure like this. The net hydrostatic pressure at the arterial end is 33 millimeters of mercury. The net colloid osmotic pressure is 20 millimeters of mercury. Now remember, the hydrostatic pressure is forcing water out of the capillary, and the blood colloid osmotic pressure is trying to draw water in. So if we subtract 20 from 33, we're going to get 13 millimeters of mercury on the positive end. Since the hydrostatic pressure is greater, that means that the net movement of water at the arterial end of the capillary is going to be out of the capillary and into the interstitial fluid. And we call that filtration. Now at the venial end, the net hydrostatic pressure is only 14 millimeters of mercury. When we subtract the net colloid osmotic pressure of 20 millimeters of mercury from 14 millimeters of mercury, now we get negative 6 millimeters of mercury. A negative pressure favors the movement of water into the capillary from the interstitial fluid, and we call that reabsorption. The movement of fluid out of the capillary is filtration. The movement of fluid into the capillary is reabsorption. The solutes that are dissolved in the blood plasma and the interstitial fluid will go with the movement of the water across the capillary. We call this solvent drag, or sometimes bulk flow. So this is how we're getting not only water from blood plasma and interstitial fluid back and forth, but also all the things that are dissolved in that water, like all the things we mentioned earlier. So what we've noticed now is that we're going to have, in a normal situation, net filtration at the arterial end of the capillary, delivering things to the interstitial fluid, and net reabsorption at the venial end of the capillary, collecting things from the interstitial fluid. And that is capillary exchange.
You buy a pair of socks, that's 2 socks. You buy a pair of Bombas socks, that's 4 socks. Because one purchased is one donated. Socks are the #1 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters. So when you buy a pair of super comfortable Bombas socks, you're also donating a pair. Bombas customers have powered over 150 million donations. So Bombas would like to thank you 150 million times. But we only have like 30 seconds. Go to bombas.com and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com and use code AUDIO at checkout.
And it is the main thing that our capillaries do. If our circulatory system is all about getting materials from point A to point B in your body, then we got to make sure that when they get to point B, we can deliver them to whoever needs to receive them. And that's capillary exchange. So I hope this has helped you. I hope you have a good understanding of capillary exchange, better than you did before. And maybe this will help you get that B or better that you need on your next A&P exam. So I want to say thank you very much for listening and also being patient. I know those of you who are listening week to week are recognizing some of the long breaks that I've been taking. A lot of them have to do with where I am in my semesters, where I am in my publishing work and other things like that. And trying to get episodes posted as quickly as I can based on how much time I've got. And I appreciate your patience. And I really appreciate all the people who have been writing to me and asking for new episodes or asking me questions. I really do appreciate that. And keep listening. There might be some bigger breaks in the summer because it is summer. I will be doing some traveling and I do have a lot of work to do as well. So there might be some bigger breaks in the summertime, but I'm hoping that we'll get a more constant stream of episodes come fall semester so that you can get as much help as possible in your A&P course. Again, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who took the time to speak with me at the HAPS conference. I really appreciate that. I love that conference. I love that organization. I love that every year, and for me, it's been 16 years now in a row, including the 2 virtual pandemic years, of going to the annual national conference. And a big thank you to all of those people who took the time to sit down with me and let me record our conversation. So once again, thanks everybody. I will talk to you next time. Anatomy and Physiology Bit by Bit is a production of Minus 55 Media. Please take the time to rate the podcast, and don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Student Help for AP. That's Student Help, the number 4, AP. There's a whole lot of tutor videos on there that I think you're going to find helpful. Special thanks to my family, Bucks County Community College, and McGraw-Hill Education, where you can find Anatomy and Physiology Digital Suite, my low-cost, tutor video-based digital learning solution for anatomy and physiology, already being used at several colleges and universities.